Good morning. Welcome to Monday. What are we, the 28th? Okay. We're headed into budget minute review and I'll just turn it over.
Good morning, Susie Moon, Finance Manager. So I have the Health Department with me today. We have a few funds to go over. So the first one is Veterans Relief. So they receive property taxes. The bulk of that is received in April and then October. So we're anticipating seeing a larger increase in that revenue line item later this month. Most of the revenue currently showing is through March. Other financing sources, so this is going to be a transfer in from the general fund to pay administrative expenses. So we are going to be coming back to you guys when we prepare for the 2026 budget, just asking to, instead of having that come in from the general fund, to actually have the investment income that's generated in this fund to cover those expenses to help the general fund a little bit. It's not a large dollar amount, it's about 30,000, but any little bit will help.
Just a tad bit of history on that. It used to just be paid out of the Veterans Relief Fund. Then they came to us last year before, and asked if this board, if the general fund would do it. And the board said, okay. So that's how it got there. Okay. This fund generates a lot of talk because it's built up to about 900,000 now. And it never used to be that way. There used to be a lot of years where it was pretty minimal. This account was set up, if you read through the bylaws, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was set up to try and cover instances that the other agencies didn't cover. That kind of fell through the cracks type stuff. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah. It's pretty broad general assistance. So any of your food, some utility, rent, miscellaneous like emergency car repair. It wasn't sort of intended to kind of fill in where other agencies maybe couldn't support.
Right. And for a long time, it pretty much used the funds that were there. There were times it was pretty close, and these past few years, it's kind of built up. So I don't know. It begs the question, if we started, has there been enough out there that you're starting to meet the need? So it's requesting, I don't know where that goes, but there's a lot of pressure if you sit in one of those meetings. And I think any one of us can attend those meetings. You'll hear pressure to spend that. Why aren't we spending that? And they would like to have a coordinator, somebody to pay. I suggested, why don't we, kind of partner with a national organization that provides housing or does something and try to go. And that was kind of a lead balloon, but anyway, the point is there's pressure on this account. So we're going to keep hearing it.
Yeah. The group raised the assistance limits towards the end of 24. So I do think some of that spending will go up because of that. But it won't touch the balance that's there right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Why is the government, why is the county involved in the Veterans Relief Fund at all? Why aren't those funds, they're federal funds?
No, it's generated by property taxes, and it's in statute that is a certain amount is collected and preserved for veterans relief assistance for low-income veterans.
So is it fair to say that with that balance being as big as it is, that the other services that are being offered in our county are being utilized and we're not utilizing this?
It's hard to say. I think we do have a fair amount of services out there. This one in particular is specific to serving veterans, but that's not to say any of the veterans who might access this could also access other services that are, not necessarily designated for veterans, but for anybody. And so that could be a factor in it, certainly.
Do you
It-
have an idea how many veteran relief fund type organizations exist in the county besides this one?
Veteran specific,
Yes.
I would say a few. There's Heaven is veteran specific. There's, Haswa has a program called Veterans Integration Program, but they don't necessarily provide, assistance like this, like with food and what have you. They would probably try to connect individuals to the resources that are for, non-veterans as well. S-
But is this fund basically, it fulfills a need that none of the other organizations do?
It's, I'm having a hard time answering it because, veterans can access the other services that, non-veterans can access as well. So they could go to the food bank, they could go get on state assistance, the same way others could. This is intended to try to help fill in that gap of if there's still a need beyond that, or an emergency assistance, like, if they had a big emergency car repair, their car went out and they need it to get to work or something like that, this fund can help pay for that. But
So to some degree, this would be a duplicative type of a fund that other services are potentially providing.
I didn't quite catch the first part.
This would be a duplicate amount of money is being collected for services that other organizations provide also.
There are some similarities with other organizations.
That is veteran specific.
Well, yes, so Heaven, for example, they can pay for, they'll support rent assistance or potentially emergency car repair as well. What we often see with those agencies is, because this fund, each assistance category has a maximum amount. So we might only pay $1,000 towards an emergency car repair, for example. So oftentimes what we'll see is an application come in where Heaven has committed a certain amount and then they're asking for the remainder from this fund. Something like that, where it's like a partnership of both agencies trying to, get the need met.
Thank you.
So Commissioner Dahl, when you were saying there's pressure on this, you're here, what are you referring to? Because I look at that and I'm like, man, that's $1 million. Are we helping veterans with that money or not?
Yeah, there's pressure on it. The big pressure is they want a coordinator to go out and work with veterans and find ways to spend it.
Yeah.
He wants to pay a salary. I think there's a lot of services that while they may not be specific to veterans, there's a lot of duplication here that they can get otherwise. And it never was an issue until this fund started growing.
Yeah, I bet.
And so, there was a concern at one point in time, and I'll just point out, they were concerned that we were going to transfer this over to the general fund here. And we at that time said we had no intentions of doing that. But I think you could, I don't think it's any secret. I'm not a big guy of just paying salaries. I'd like to see it if we could do it for like some housing or something that when you're done, you can look at it and say, yeah, we did that.
Tangible
Right.
benefit.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of paying somebody for the service.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I think I was just trying to make the point that you're going to hear about it because there is pressure for wanting to do something with this.
Yeah, they've talked about potentially suggesting that we hire some type of coordinator. They've also been looking at maybe some type of mini grant program where agencies who serve veterans could apply for a one-time expense. If they wanted to build a wheelchair ramp at someone's home or purchase a vehicle to help with transportation for veterans or some type of one-time veteran serving project. So they've been talking about a couple of different things, but at this point, the conversation's ongoing, so.
I know it may sound like I'm a little bit negative here, and I'm really not trying to be. I want to help the veterans, but when I mean help, I want some tangible help, not just paying somebody's salary.
Yeah, so if a veteran needs to access these funds for services not available through other resources, what's that process? I mean, isn't somebody doing that now?
Yeah, so the starting point is connecting with a veteran service organization. We work with 3 different organizations that help with applications to these funds, but they'll also look at, what other resources are out there too, to assist that veteran, because sometimes another resource is better fit depending on what the need is. And so they'll kind of explore those different avenues with the veteran. And then if they end up doing an application for this fund, then they will do that and help them with that.
So there is somebody already doing that.
Yep, right now we're working with volunteers through like the VFW, Veterans Service Center, and one other one. Just forget all the names. And so they have volunteers that provide assistance with meeting with the veterans, having that initial conversation with them, and then helping them complete an application if that's where the conversation goes.
So historically, how fast has this been growing? Is it going up $200,000 a year? Is it?
So without looking back over the years, I would say it probably really built up during COVID, and probably be a combination of factors. I think there was a lot of other assistance out there during COVID. There was also some limited access just due to like things being shut down and whatnot. So we still had a process in place for people to access the funds, but the service organizations weren't open with business hours like they were before. So I think it was probably a combination of those things. And then that's, I think, when we really saw it go up.
When I came on and got first made aware of it, it was about 800,000. So it's grown about 100,000 in these
Okay.
2.5 years or whatever.
So there's a fraction of property tax that creates this fund.
Correct.
I
Okay.
think that's statute, right? That wasn't anything the
Yes.
commissioners voted on. It was
Correct.
just statute.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry,
Okay.
we kind of beat that one to
No,
death a
it's
little bit,
okay.
but-
That's okay. I got a better understanding. Thank
Yeah.
you. That was great.
So services, currently looks like we're below target, and that's mainly because if we're not getting applications to use the funds, we're not spending them. So it's hard to compare it to target because it fluctuates from month to month based on the type of activity. Human services, so again, this fund also receives property tax revenue, so we anticipate seeing an increase in that line item sometime near the end of April. Intergovernmental revenue, so that's gonna be your grant revenue. This one includes the CDBG grant, so that's the Community Development Block Grant. And again, those are gonna be reimbursement based, so the timing of when that revenue comes in will fluctuate throughout the year. Miscellaneous revenue is largely made up of investment earnings for this fund. So services, looks like we've exceeded target. That's largely due to internal service billings that were paid in January related to insurance, IT, transfers. So these are budgeted transfers that are made to Fund 14101. We do anticipate closing Fund, is it 14101 later this year?
Yes, I think so. And
So-
moving that one.
Yeah, so we'll be combining the activity of Fund 14001 and 14101 to make it a little bit easier.
And 101 is what?
Fund 14101 is going to be the substance abuse fund.
It's called the Substance Abuse Fund, but it has our Developmental Disabilities Program grant as well as Criminal Justice Treatment Account grant. So right now we have kind of two separate funds that kind of serve a similar purpose, or the grant funding is just running through. So we're going to combine those just so they're in one instead of two separate ones.
So as you mentioned, intergovernmental revenue, that's made up of grant revenue. So again, it fluctuates from month to month, so it's hard to put that against a trend. Other financing sources, again, that's just a transfer in coming from Fund 14001. So we did have some supplies that were purchased that we weren't originally anticipating during last year's budget. So we do anticipate that being on the May budget amendment. So it looks like they spent about $2,000 currently. And then again, we'll be closing out this fund during the year, so it won't be in the next budget. So the health department, so they do get revenue for license and permits. So a portion of the environmental health permits and licenses, those are billed annually, typically near the end of the year. So the revenue would come in early the next year. So we typically see a really large influx of revenue in the beginning of the year, and then it tapers off throughout the year. Intergovernmental revenue, again, that's going to be grant revenue. We are anticipating roughly 1.4 million to be received in July, August. So that should put us closer to our budgeted figure for that line item.
Is that from taxes?
That'd be, intergovernmental would be grants, grant funding.
So that would be the Foundational Public Health Services funding. And I haven't taken a look yet at the state budget from yesterday. The House and the Senate were both proposing some reductions to that particular budget line. So I'm not sure where that landed, but so it may not quite be the 1.4, it might be a little bit less.
And that's the money that if we don't, whatever we don't use gets sent back?
Mhm.
Is there Fed stuff that's involved in that too? We had a brief conversation. Some of the Fed stuff is going away, and I don't know that it has a big effect on us, but
Yeah, the Foundational Public Health Services funding is entirely state funding.
okay.
Yeah, our CON grant that we get from Department of Health usually has a tiny bit of federal funding in it. I don't know, we haven't heard anything about what that looks like moving forward, but
okay.
Gina, how broad is the scope of what those funds can be used for?
the Foundational Public Health Services, it's intended to enhance your core functions of public health. So if you're looking to, it's like right now we're doing communicable disease work. We're doing what was required of us by statute. If we wanted to enhance that and do some type of outreach effort or an additional service, we could use Foundational Public Health Services funding for that enhanced effort. It has to be tied to public health and sort of enhancing what our core functions are.
Is homelessness and substance abuse in the public health?
We'd have to really kind of talk that through and maybe get legal involved in what that looks like. I think it would come down to what we wanted to use the money for and look at that piece and then make a determination about whether it fits with enhancing our public health functions or not. Yeah. That's kind of a squishy answer. I apologize.
It's okay.
We haven't had anything too exciting on the expenditure side. We're pretty close to target in all three categories: supplies, services, and personnel. So low income housing, again, they have intergovernmental revenue. That's largely grant revenue that will fluctuate. So that's why it's below target, but all the other revenue lines are where we're currently expecting them to be.
What's O and M?
I believe operating and maintenance.
A lot of these fund names are from the beginning of time, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they got
They
there.
don't always over time, they don't always reflect what you do. with it anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will give you a little bit of heads up because I've had a couple people, it been my ear on rental assistance and their dissatisfaction of going through CAP and how do we, what's the process for getting another agency that can help with that? I don't, you may have some of those kind of questions tomorrow or that may arise. So I'm
Okay.
just kind of giving a
Okay,
heads up.
okay, I appreciate that. I'd be curious to learn more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So services are going to be the largest expenditure category for this fund. So that's money that we pay to contractors within or subcontractors within the community. Again, these don't occur at any regular interval. So when services are provided, that's when we're paying out the funds.
Do we have any interaction right now with Hope Village?
No, we
Okay.
coordinate with them occasionally on things like the point in time count or some other activities, but
They're putting out an RFP and the way that operates could change. So I was just curious if we had anything in there.
mm-mm.
So they haven't worked with you at all, just with us at all regarding their new proposed contract that they're looking at putting out?
I did not work with the city at all on that. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Well, if we had funds going over there, I would say, yeah, the answer is definitely yes.
I'm sure they're gonna come after us for
Yeah.
funds.
Yeah.
Isn't
And I guess-
there, aren't we sending them money that's collected for the
Mm.
purposes of homelessness?
Yes, there's a fund right now. They're already getting that chunk of money.
Well, that was part of the dock fees and they chose to, at one point in time, to have that go directed straight to them. And I think it was, at the time, it was about 100,000. I think then the filings have gone down, so it was around 67. It was 70 grand. Then the new council voted to put that back into county dock fees for
Yeah, but that's-
disbursement.
That's in addition to monies that they are collecting, I believe from a memorandum of understanding, it was signed years ago that from I got a copy of it.
Yeah, so there's
Um,
now I'm gonna have to get into a little bit of history of the document recording fees. So the document recording fees, as they're established in RCW now, it's all under one RCW. It used to be 3 or 4 separate RCWs that established the document recording fees that were designated for housing and homeless services. So there was one of those, one of the smaller amounts, one of the smaller fees, a portion based on city population size is sent to the cities. So they do still get that portion as Kelso does as well. And I believe Kalama and Castle Rock.
And Woodland, all 5 cities.
Woodland, so
Yeah.
they get a percentage of, uh, one of the document recording fees,
Right,
right? And then, as Commissioner Dahl mentioned, they had passed a resolution to collect more of that document recording fee.
Right.
So they did that for about a year or so and then sent it back to the county.
but the memorandum of understanding that existed long before Camp Alabama even existed.
Yes,
That is a continuing process that still, those monies have never changed up or down. It's based on that formula of population.
population. I think what gets dispersed to the cities is based on excise tax collection, something like that. So yes, it's all formula based and it's not a lot. But that has continued.
Right, okay. I'll get you a copy of that memorandum of understanding.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question is because in one of the articles on Hope Village, one of the council members was interviewed saying that they're not receiving any money from the recording fees from the commissioners. And I'm like, no, actually you are, but it might not be what you want. Correct? They are receiving those funds.
Yes, yes. Yep, I think they're getting ready to allocate some of that funding here coming up. It's usually each spring they allocate their portion of document recording fees out to the community partners.
Yeah, I think we pay it to them quarterly, I believe.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but yeah.
Okay,
So this is going to be our last fund, so it's the opioid fund. We're expecting to receive our first settlement in July. So we should see a large increase in miscellaneous revenue.
And what can that be used for?
Opioid remediation activities, which can be a variety of things. I'll send you some information. Actually, I did want to do maybe a workshop with the board on the funds and look at, so we can kind of talk through what the uses are, where the funds are at. I did bring more of kind of a summary for you today to take a look at.
It's multiple pages.
Thank you.
I have it somewhere. Yeah. Are you aware, Gina, if there's any still pending suits out there?
I don't know. It's hard to keep track of.
Yeah.
It seems like just randomly I'll get an email. It says, hey, there's another allocation. That happened a couple weeks ago where there was another allocation that came in. So we updated our summary here of what we have. So to date, we've received about 2.5 million. There's some investment interest earned. So we have about 2.6 in this opioid settlement fund to date. And we anticipate the settlements all vary. There's some that you get an allocation each year for the next 10, 12, 15 years, and some come all at once. So it's just really has varied across the settlements and how they have settled.
what are those anticipated fund numbers based on?
When there's a settlement and they determine how much comes to our county, if they have determined you get X amount over 10 years, then we have certain amounts that we anticipate. So that's what you see in that the settlements payments anticipated over time. That's what we know of at this point that we can expect to receive each year because of the settlement agreement.
So known settlements at this time is what this is based on?
These are settlements that have happened already.
Okay,
Yeah. And I don't know, Commissioner Dahl was asking what else might be out there. I'm not sure, to be honest.
So once we receive that, our portion of the settlement for 2025, this balance will be at 3 million.
Yeah, yeah. And the interest right now, the investment interest earned you see is just to date. And so that will,
Yeah.
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 So that will grow as well. Yeah, if the board's interested in setting up a workshop, I'm happy to do that. And we can kind of talk through what the allowable uses are. We've not really had an in-depth conversation about
Yeah,
what the board would like to potentially do with these funds.
actually, I think that'd be a good idea, because I know at one point in time, previous board, when we were talking about the youth mental health facility, we're hoping
Mhm.
to be able to access some of this to help fund a place and things can change, but it'd be good to just sit down and, once again, I'm more in the tangible than I am just starting program
Yes.
type thing. So I think that'd be a great conversation to have, because
Okay.
this will just keep building
Mhm.
and it will just start, the pressure to do something with it will just keep building also.
Yeah. Yep. That sounds good. I'll take a look at the calendar and get something plugged in.
And then nothing too exciting on the expenditure side for this fund. Doesn't, based on my understanding, there's no planned uses for the money just yet. So anytime staff is working on anything related to opioid, they are able to allocate some time to that fund. So that's why we have a little bit of personnel charges. That's everything.
Okay. Anything else? Tomorrow's Board of Health, the only the real thing I have on there is people come in and talk about the 988.
Right. Great Rivers.
Yeah, yeah, because they did with us 3, and I thought it was pretty informative, and we've heard a lot of stuff out here, and I think that'd be informative. Other than that, I'm hoping to keep it kind of open. If there's some questions, like I said, you may see something on the written program, so
Okay.
just try to give you a heads up on what's been in my ear in case it comes
Okay.
up tomorrow.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was gonna ask Commissioner Rader if you know how at the end of our meeting before we head into public comments, we kind of just talk about things that maybe have come out. If you don't mind talking about wildlife, because I thought you had some good questions to them. I'm not sure you got some great answers, but I think you're at the level that was here they just relay answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought you had some good observations and comments to them that I would ask you to maybe relay to the audience if you're good with that. Yeah.
Actually, I was gonna bring up that might be something we want to consider, as a board, is just going through and relating to the public what meetings we attended, what took place, the conversations that we had at different, organizations, just to fill them in on what we're doing throughout the week.
I thought about that, but I watched like Waterloo City Council, as they go through every member of the board, versus 7 of them, and there's only 3 of us. But they spend a lot of time reviewing who went to what meetings and what happened at and I'm going, oh my God. I thought about doing that here, but I don't know, I've been to half a dozen meetings in the last week.
We don't have to.
Say, yeah, I went to these things, but.
Yeah, I think any one of us is free. If we've been to something and we think it's of importance out here,
Bring it
I'd
up.
certainly encourage us to relay it. I will, I was gonna let you guys know, but I thought I'd bring it up tomorrow too, is I got the Glusenkamp Perez group invited me to go out on a bridge tour, which is kind of interesting. And I'll talk about it again tomorrow. Of course, it was her and her staff. Dale Lewis, Port Longview was there, Bill Fashing, COG, myself. The group that I call them River Keepers, they have another name, gal that they kind of run the maritime ships. There was one of the ship captains that hops on in Astoria and drives it up.
Yeah.
And then whatever that group is, I call it River Keepers, but it's something else. Of course, then WashDOT was there with, their local rep, plus their bridge expert for the state of Washington. And, so we got a chance to look at that bridge, and WashDOT is working with NTSB, the Transportation Safety Board, to develop a condition safety report. And I asked them, I said, because we've been talking about this bridge, I started talking about it 2 years ago with when Glusenkamp Perez got elected. Because I think it's a long-term project. It won't get done till way after us, but you got to get it started. So I basically asked WashDOT, is that like the first step in deciding what to do with this thing? And that's just like step one. Just drives me crazy. They should have been doing this years ago, right? You know, to figure out the safety of this bridge. But anyway, they're working on that, and hopefully we'll get a copy of that. They came right out and said, WashDOT does not have funding sufficient to maintain the bridge network in Washington State. They just shut down that one. I know it. Channel issues, the river captain was kind of interested. He says, we got channel issues. It goes all over the place. In fact, he said the channel under the bridge is not under the highest part of the bridge. So they were asking him, you know, Perez was asking him some of the fixes he'd see, and he said, we'll get that channel straightened out because it moves all over the place. It's not under the highest part of the bridge. They would like to see, in case of emergency, arms at each end of the bridge where they could shut off traffic. Plus, they manually monitor the heights. You know, that bridge, because of the way it's designed, between hot weather and cold weather, it fluctuates in height, in feet, 4 to 6 feet. I know it. I was flabbergasted. I said, feet? And they go, yeah, not inches, feet. So there's times under there where they brought a ship through and they only had 14 inches. And they have to manually calculate that now. And they want to get it electronically. So as the ship's coming, they can see it right away that they got clearance for this. I guess they brought one up. They had to take the smokestacks off to even get it under the bridge.
Wow.
So
I thought that was interesting.
Channel and the bridge, they have to offload X amount of cargo in Astoria before they even come up the channel.
Yeah. So it was
God,
some interesting stuff. I was just, last year over $32 billion in commerce came up our river down to Portland and back. You know, it's a busy place.
32 billion?
32
You
billion.
would think that'd be a priority to set money aside to make sure that continues.
Yeah.
When you have a Congress that 32 billion is 0.32 on their schedule,
Yeah.
they scratch off about 9.
I know it.
Because they don't want to waste all the ink printing it.
The other thing I call him the sea captain. He wasn't the channel captain, whatever. Interesting man was talking about was something you kind of talked about. Out in the ocean, these big ships run on a heavy black oil and they run very efficient on it and they run strong. Washington State does not allow ships to run on that in their waters. So as they're approaching our entrance out there, he said about a mile out, they'll start purging that system and switch over to diesel, which is not as efficient and doesn't give them the power they have. And he said, and you touched on this after one port meeting, he said one ship a month shuts down coming up that river. So if it shuts down at the wrong time,
And the
More
current's
time.
running out.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it turns sideways, it hits one of those pillars on that. Oh, my God.
And I said, one a month? He says, yeah, one a month on average. We're going along and then it just shuts down and they have to get it.
And that's the
Get
ones
it
coming
going
up the
again.
river.
Yeah.
In the port meeting, they talked about ones coming down the river, having mechanical or steerage problems.
Yeah. And that probably happens when they shut down. So I thought that was that was interesting too, and took me back to the conversation that you were talking about. that we make them switch over to the diesel. They'll run on diesel, but it's not as efficient and they have some issues with it and the thing shuts down pretty wild, right? And our port, I learned this from Dale. I thought this was interesting. He says, I think he said we're the only port in Washington where ships from the Port of Longview can get out and in on one tide.
Right.
I guess that's a big deal.
Yeah, we're the highest.
Oh.
one.
Yeah, yeah, so when it's running out, they can get a ship out all the way to the ocean. When it's running in, they can get it all the way into the port.
Wow. Yeah, I would imagine some of those tidal swings make a big difference.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you got to learn more than you ever thought. Yeah, some of that was interesting. When they told me how much that bridge fluctuates, I was just, wow. God, I know, I had to re-ask it. Are you saying feet, not inches? And they're going, yep.
Man,
Wow.
I drove over that bridge yesterday, over and back, and I kept thinking, going both ways, I kept thinking, if this goes in the river with me at this point, what am I gonna do?
Well, back when it was built, those old, what do they call those? Those bumpers, they call them.
Yeah.
They're like, they were pretty long, like 30
Yeah.
feet on each side or something. They
Yeah.
were pretty big structures.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
And they were pointed on both sides. If a ship could bounce off of them in theory, and
Yeah.
stay away from the pillar. And then they also had buoys on both sides that the Coast Guard maintained. And then the bumpers rotted away, so they took those out.
yeah,
And then the Coast Guard decided not to maintain the buoys anymore. They took those out. So the marker buoys that were some type of indicator, at least to tell ships
Yeah.
up and down, there, here's where you're at, even in the dark. Those went away.
so there's no bumpers on that thing anymore. And it, to me, it's, if everything lines up, it's a disaster waiting to happen. The ship's coming in, the current's not right, it shuts down, boom.
Steering problems,
Yeah.
mechanical
Yeah.
problems,
Yeah,
something that, oh, well, let's get a tugboat in the morning while the bridge is sitting on the ship.
yeah. And the issue with the state, the gentleman that was their bridge expert, he seemed pretty knowledgeable, he seemed nice enough. But just flat out saying, state of Washington does not have funds to maintain the bridges in the state of Washington. That's a little bit nerve wracking. Now, in some instances, and I told him, I said, don't throw me overboard for saying this, but is tolls a possibility? And they said on some, not for all maintenance, but for some heavy stuff, you could actually toll. And that would be oh man, you'd have people yelling at you, but I don't know what's cheaper, tolling and have it maintained or having it wrecked,
Well, didn't I just see, was it yesterday that the legislature raised the gas tax 6 cents a gallon?
Yeah,
Where the hell's all that money go?
special programs,
Yeah, just put it in the. general
Carbon.
fund so they can
General,
spend
yeah.
on any damn thing they.
global
want.
warming, all that kind of special stuff.
what a dereliction of duty, man.
Yeah. Anyway,
Thank you, ladies.
thanks for listening to us.
Thank you very much. Being commissioners.
Yeah, I know it. I know it. So we got about 15 minutes. We can just recess till the others show up. Okay, we will do that. Recess. Okay, we'll come out of recess and move into a agenda item review. Go right ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sean Roy, Public Works. Getting in here in front of Susan this morning because she's got a lot of items and I just got one. So jumping the gun to motion item number 6. It's a sole source procurement for Pano Rapid Detect. This is something we had talked about a few weeks ago. I gave you guys a handout real fast, a map on. This is more related to the landfill for detecting fires in a timely manner, but also it provides fire notification to the surrounding communities and areas. We're looking at the dark blue circle. The lighter blue, maybe more purple colors are going to be ones that are operated by DNR. So this is a sole source request. And then once this is approved, we'll work towards a contract and then bring that actual contract to the board.
You kind of had an estimate last time roughly.
It's estimated at $40,000 a year for a 5-year period. So $200,000 over 5 years.
But we won't know until you actually get to,
That's our current estimate and scope.
So can you detect a wildfire in its earliest stages?
Sure.
How small, during fire season and people aren't burning, for example, but flip it around the other way, when people are burning on their own property, are we gonna see that?
Yes. So this is the second half of a 2-stage approach with the landfill. Our first one is going to be having a thermal camera within the fill area. And then this detects the particle plumes that come off a fire itself. So this covers all the surrounding areas as well as the landfill itself. And so as soon as it's able to detect that plume, it'll reach out to the emergency services and start getting a response going at that time. So
Are they
say
gonna-
if
ahead.
a homeowner has their burn permit already applied for, the fire agency in that area wouldn't need to respond. Easy burn. Oh, yep, there's a permit for this geographical location it gives us, this address or these GPS coordinates, and they just move on. Or if it's say a burn pile on a warehouser says, you know, they logged an area, they have their scrapyard. My understanding is they file a permit and that's already notified, so the detection would go, okay, this is a scheduled burn.
So probably, I don't know, 80% of homeowners who are gonna burn something on their property don't get online and do a permit. They're just clearing their property.
Mhm.
Is the fire department gonna respond to every one of those to figure out that it's not a fire?
You know, I'm not sure on that. So from the camera itself, it has a 36x optical zoom in, so you can, if it's a clear sign, but a clear line of sight, they'd be able to determine that from the camera itself. If not, they may drive by and see what's going on. I think that's
Okay.
something we want to work out with our local fire departments at that point in time and get a better understanding. Because, you know, this blue circle does reach all the way down to North Longview, so it's quite a long range of sight.
Well, that's what I'm worried about. If we're
Mhm.
gonna start generating a hell of a lot of work for people to have to go out and check every damn plume that pops up
Sure.
and say, oh yeah, okay, it's just somebody clearing a piece of property
Yeah,
or a campfire that somebody's camping.
yeah, 100%. And, you know, we have the ability to integrate this with the local, so the local fire department, so they can get onto the app on their phone, open up, oh, okay, that's what that is. Or, oh, maybe we need to look a little bit farther into this.
Turn your mic on.
Let's say there's a fire at the landfill, depending on which cell the fire is, we might let it burn to create more space for us.
But, you know, we
there's
are,
always practical uses too,
There you
right?
go.
and at the landfill, we are surrounded by timberland. We do want to know if there's a
Yeah.
forest fire from lightning or some other source as it may move towards that. We want to be able to be preemptive on those lines.
Then over time, we'll be educating the public to fill out the burn permits.
Good morning, Savannah Clement, Public Works. I just wanted to tag on to your question and then Sean's response. So when we were going through the demonstrations of Pano, the Pano AI system, what they're doing is kind of looking at the size, the density, the type of smoke. And so the AI piece of it can kind of take a look at that and analyze it, and then also kind of tell us what it thinks. So based off of like a burn pile, it might come up, it might see it, but the AI is going to kind of determine how, what kind of prompt it's going to give on it. And right now, we've only been viewing it from like a public works solid waste perspective, not so much with the local agencies. So I think what we would probably do as we're getting this going is really keep it in-house until we get a good managed system, recognize what these alerts are, how they're gauging it, and then maybe start moving on and sharing that maybe to other jurisdictions. So we're not just like, here you go, kind of gauging it, filling it out, seeing how it works for us, seeing how often we get alerts. And if we're getting alerts, multiple times on a decent weekend for burning compared to, a 2 a.m. Dense flume near the landfill, that kind of thing. So I think we'll probably expand on that once we get farther along.
Makes sense.
What we could do too is just provide the board, maybe a month or two into burn season, you guys with an update, like, hey, here's kind of alerts we're getting, here's what we pass on, or here's what the fire districts respond to, just so you guys have an idea.
So when you said the type of plume, is it going to be able to differentiate between a wood that's burning, a tire that somebody lit on fire, or a Tesla that's burning down?
I don't, I don't think it's going to analyze it to that extent, but it's just when we were doing all the demonstrations, we've done several. That was just one of the examples that she had given is like, hey, we're going to gauge, does it look like a campfire type of a smoke, or is this a dense battery, like fire that's growing or the heat that's coming off? So I don't know exactly until we kind of get into it what its capabilities will be with a smoke analyzation part. Because every fire is different in size and scope and material. So I guess I don't have a great answer for that, but I think we'll get more information as we go.
Is there a training period for this thing to learn? Like, for example, let's say for the sake argument that the fire department responds to a house fire, and you can also see that on here. Can you tell it that that's what it is and help it learn, or is that?
So did you recall that in the demos?
I think the system's always learning.
Yeah.
Currently, they're throughout multiple towers within our current area. These ones are specific for DNR. So both Signal Peak and Davis Peak have one on it right now. And then there's others throughout Washington State. Those are more forest related, but as it continues to grow the system, we'll have more ideas of how it will continue to grow.
And to that regard, when it has an event, it'll notify you, like, so in the dashboard, and you can mark like, I don't remember what the terminology is, but like insignificant or, not applicable, so that it can learn what type of events, to respond to or that we're interested in learning more about. So that's how it can learn, is by us engaging with it and telling it, no, that was a campfire, or not interested, or not within our scope, or what have you.
That was a question I had with regard to the monitoring 24/7. Who gets those alerts and what do we do? What's the protocol?
That's a great question. So it is 24/7. And so the way that it was explained to us through Pano is it will go through dispatch just like anything else. If they recognize it as an event, right? It's 3 a.m., large fire near the landfill, boom, that's going to notify authorities, including us. But we'll have to we'll have to give them our notification preferences, just like we would with any call out system.
If we had a fire breakout in the landfill, what's our response time, or who responds to that?
That's a great question. So it depends on if it's during operating hours or not. If it's during operating hours, our staff usually take care of that. It's usually a small battery or something of that nature. After hours, it depends on when it's found. If it's found immediately, say a neighbor across the valley sees it, it's usually probably something larger by that time. So this is really trying to address the after hours and come up with some sort of response mechanism that's efficient.
Okay, so the neighbor across the valley is going to sense it before this thing does?
He's saying right now, current state, that's how it works, is somebody sees it, smells it, calls it in, 911 call.
Okay.
Fire department dispatches out. They call our landfill staff. We have a great working relationship with, it's Fire 6 at Castle Rock. They'll call our supervisors. We all respond. I'm not included, but they all respond to the fire. So it's fire agencies and staff. Perfect state would be our response, our detection time would be very, very quick. Right now it's somebody sees it, hears it, smells it, something's going on. That's not good enough, right? I mean, we need something better. And that's what we're hoping to get out of this, where response time would be in minutes, not hours. And then it would be probably the same trajectory as far as response, which would be the fire district and staff, would go up there. It'd just be a lot quicker.
Where are we monitoring this from 24/7? what's our end of it on this end? Obviously, you're not sitting up in the landfill watching it.
Right. Currently, we don't have like a fire watch. We don't have an on-site after-hours notification system. We don't have a SCADA system in place right now. We're hoping Pano AI will do that for us on the fire detection side of it. And their system monitors on their end 24/7. So they're like our Long Bell security, but for fire monitoring, will be, if the board approves it.
So where are they located?
I don't know where they're located.
I'm unsure on that. I'll get back with you.
Yeah.
So they're monitoring this thing, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, they see a fire and they're gonna call us, or they're gonna call the fire
They'll
department?
call
first?
dispatch. They'll call, what anybody would do when they see a fire, to call dispatch first, but we'll get notified at the same time simultaneously.
Okay,
I'll just add this. I attended the emergency management, I don't know what you want to call it, meeting last week where we had all of the counties, emergency first responders and the state there. And it was plainly obvious that we're actually deficient in a lot of areas when it comes to this. And this is a good step to help with some of the things that I noticed that we are really deficient in. And it'll be interesting to hear from Larry when we get the audit back from the state, where we're at and what things we can do to mitigate some of the deficiencies that we have. But I can see that this will help with some of the things that I saw.
We hope so. This is kind of the first line of the detection piece. We're coming at it from a three-prong approach, which is prevention, because prevention is batteries. A majority of the landfill fires are from batteries of some variety that are dumped in the fill. So that's one thing. The second one is detection. And so we're looking at Pano AI, obviously, and the other approach we're doing is actually on-site thermal imaging cameras. So that's our second piece that will probably be coming to the board hopefully very soon on for the detection, and then response. And so that's with working with our local fire district, working with our staff, and then looking at equipment needs for response. So we'll be coming forward probably a few more times on this topic to the board on these different approaches that we're trying to mitigate this.
So this particular software is the particle plume, that's what it detects.
Yes,
The
sir.
thermal part of it is, or is it the same company, or that's a different item that will come forward?
Correct. So it's gonna be a different item that'll come forward in the future.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love technology and I hate technology. I think it has good, because I've been here when Calet 6 responded to a fire up
Mhm.
on there that was probably a battery fire or whatever. So I know some of that happens, and if you can detect it early enough, maybe that you don't send those people out and cost us money. The bad thing is we live in the state of Washington, and as this coverage gets more and more, they'll just be sending you tickets in the mail for burning stuff without a permit.
Mm.
I know where this all leads, but I think using the scope for looking over our landfill, I don't have an issue with that. I just know
Well-
where our state will want to take it.
We don't have to give the state access. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. And having DNR use it
Say
currently.
no, Sean.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think, they've been using it for quite a while, DNR, and I don't think they issue any citations, but we can find out.
Well,
Just to
if
make
they-
sure.
If they get it over a large enough portion of the state, they will.
Mhm.
do we fill out a 1-year burning permit for the landfill?
Do you know what office we would work through?
Because we could extend the longevity of it.
Just in case, so we don't get a fine.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Sean.
you. Keep up the good work. Well, his part was 2 minutes. We made it 20 up here.
So good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. And as Sean said, I have a long list of items coming before you. The first two items are supplements to our local agency agreements. one for the South Cloverdale Road, Confer Road intersection, and the second for the South Cloverdale Road project. And the reason these are coming about, so each of them, the total dollar amount of the project is not changing. We're shifting $5,000 on each of them from the contract line, which can go towards paying the contractor, to the local agency line, which would be reimbursement to the county. The reason we're doing this is because once your local agency agreement is approved, you have 6 months before you, to start billing the process, before they consider you an inactive project. So this project took us a while back and forth with the state to get them to agree to our final specifications. The project is now out for advertisement. We will open the bids in May. We'll award in June. Construction will probably start July. And so what's happening is the time frame from when we are approved to when we're going to submit our first bill, because we weren't going to submit county dollars, our county workforce, the advertisement for the bill, anything against the federal money, we were going to put that against some of our other funding mechanisms. But if we don't bill them before the 6-month point, the project will become inactive and they'll take the money back. So all that we're doing is we're shifting $5,000 on each project so we can bill the project advertisement and some of the staff time, so our project does not become inactive before we start the contract itself with the construction. So it's just a shifting around of where the money is coming from, whose pocket is paying for that dollars.
And this
We're-
is both item 1 and 2,
This is both item 1 and 2.
5,000 each item?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we typically, Susan, get down to the wire on this kind of stuff where we have to do this, or is it just this an exception?
This is an exception, and the other reason is because we didn't put our time on the federal dollars. We just were like, okay, let's make this as simple as possible. Our federal dollars will go towards the construction contract. Our staff time and the advertisement will either go against the CRAB money, the ARPA money, or the county road fund dollars. So because this project is so large and has so many funding sources, it ended up being in this situation. If it was a lot of our smaller projects or a sole funding source, we always put money for agency dollars in. So that was why in this particular case, because of the large funding buckets that we're pulling from, we just didn't think that we would be this far along in the process without actually being under construction. All right, so that was 1 and 2. Any other questions on that? Okay, item number 3 is, oops, I went too far. Is change order number 1 with the Columbia River contractors for the unit price guardrail installation repair project. So the unit price contract is ones where we're going out and repairing damaged guardrail. So this change order is a total increase of $11,770. It is a mix of, so when we went out there, some of the added guardrail did not have an existing bid item for it. So we needed longer post for some of the work, and for the city of Castle Rock work, we needed to add removing guardrail to their bid documents. So that is what this increase of $11,000 is for the additional items that weren't on the initial bid. The total amount is $7,525 to the city of Castle Rock and $4,245 for Cowlitz County.
The original project didn't define removal of guardrail?
Not for Castle Rock. So it was not included in their bid schedule. They had an additional accident that came through during the bid process, and that section needed to have guardrail removed instead of just a new post put in. The guardrail actually had to be removed, as did the post, because of the amount of damage to them. A lot of times the guardrail's already gone when they get out there, and so Castle Rock had a small bit that they wanted to get done, and then they had a second accident that we added on for them.
Okay.
And they are using the same unit costs that they bid for the county. It's just on a separate schedule for Castle Rock.
Great.
What'd you say their portion was, Susan?
Their portion was
7,000 something?
7,000 something, 7,525. And the county was 4,245.
Okay.
So then the next item is that unusual resolution that we talked about on Wednesday for the tax title parcel for purchase by the city of Longview for use in the not Coal Creek, Columbia Heights project that they're undertaking. So it's the sale of that particular parcel.
That a tax title parcel is a piece that we've taken and we have put out for auction, but nobody's ever
No. there's
ever
never
done
been-
up on it. So then it brings us to a point where we can do these type of things with it.
Yes, especially because it's going to a municipality for a public use and the value of it is so small. We can go through this process versus having to do another auction. All right, so then item number 7 is the bid award for the Italian Creek Culvert Replacement. The award would be to DeWitt Construction for the amount of $434,355. That's $165,000 under the engineer's estimate. We had 7 bidders. The initial low bidder was considered non-responsive and withdrew their bid, which moved DeWitt up to the lowest responsible bidder. This project is funded through FEMA and Washington State Department of Emergency Management. It's considered, this is going to sound crazy, it's considered a small project, so we already have the money set aside in the county road funds to pay for this. At the end of all of our small projects, we are able to go back and do an accounting to see if we ran over. And if in total the small projects run over, we can request additional funding.
Hmm.
And I don't remember, Sean, is this one of the sets that was that they went and instead of the normal 75% FEMA funding, that they bumped it up? I think this event might have been that event. So instead of us having to pay 12.5, I think we're paying 5%. So
And is this culvert the one where Italian Creek butts up against Kalama River Road, or is it the one that's up by, I think it's Green Hill,
it's off beyond Green.
Okay.
Yes,
past that?
it's past that. It's up, it's just past Greenwood.
Okay,
It's a little ways up from Greenwood.
Okay.
Not very far beyond it. It's milepost 1.9. I don't have the picture, but yes, it's
I know-
past
I know which one
Greenwood.
it is. Okay.
So it's shallow. It doesn't have a lot of cover. So we're installing, that was one of the reasons our culvert ended up being as wide as it did in order to carry the flows. We didn't have a lot of vertical height we could play with.
That road's sketchy all the way up. Not a fun road to meet a logging truck coming down in the morning.
It's one of the, I personally prefer to take Greenwood.
Yeah.
So. So my final project for tomorrow is another bid award for the Garlock Road Delameter Creek Fish Passage Project. This is at milepost 0.72. It's funded by the Brian Abbott Fish Barrier Removal Board. We also received 7 bidders on this project. The lowest responsible bidder was Western United Civil Group for a cost of $2,349,120. This is about $243,000 over the engineer's estimate. The biggest item that was over, I went back and I looked at the bid, is about $160,000 on the concrete. So we need to check our future bids, because I looked at all of the concrete bids and all of the bidders, and we were low bidder on all of them. So we need to go back and readjust our concrete prices on our future bids. Apparently they've gone up and we missed that. We are in the process of requesting from Brian Abbott an increase in our grant. They pay 85%, we pay 15%. I do know they have extra money this biennium, so we're going to do a cost increase based on our actual bids.
Susan, when I look at that number, my stomach just turns to think that that's what we're gonna spend on whatever it is. What's the process? How do they determine when a fish passage is necessary and when it's not?
So there's a long drawn out process that they go through. So if you go on the internet, DNR actually has fish maps where they show you which which species run up which streams, which one are documented, which are projected based on the habitat and the downstream barriers, and when it's spawning or it's juvenile habitat. Then there's also a whole map that they maintain that shows all of the culvert points and which ones are passable and which ones are not. So there's green dots, there's orange dots, and there's red dots, or maybe they're black. Basically, there is a group in DNR that goes out to all the culverts and they've rated them. And there's different criteria on whether they're passable or non-passable. So a lot of our culverts are considered 33% blockages, 67% blockages. And it's due to certain times of the year. There's criteria that the fish do not want to go through our culverts. Either the water's too shallow, the velocity through it is too great. Depending on the habitat will depend on what they rate it on. So if it's for spawning, it's velocity and depth of water for the big fish to get up. And it's also a velocity issue for juvenile rearing habitat, because if it's going too fast, they can't get back to the areas that they want to go. There's also a drop issue. So if your drop at the end of the culvert is too high, they'll consider that passability decreased. Because I guess fish are only so athletic.
It'll be interesting to see the funding of this in the future with the bill, and I don't have it sitting right in front of me, so I can't recite the name again, but it looks like it passed and it'll be signed where basically, if I'm understanding it right, these funds come in and then they're allocated and they sit in with this group, and then you apply for them. Now those funds will be transferred to the general fund, and that group will have to ask for allocations each year on what they have coming up.
So I'm not sure if it's the same group. There's also the Public Works Trust Fund.
That's
That's the one, and that's a different pot of
Different
money than
than the-
this.
Then the Brian Adams.
And Brian,
Okay.
yeah, the Public Works Trust Fund is actually an account that they have, and they're generally not fish projects. So the Public Works Trust Fund is partially funding the dam raise in Lexington. They're also a funding source a lot of communities use for water sewer projects.
Okay.
And it's a loan program. So that when they put money in and they're low interest loans to communities, so especially cities, it's very important for these low interest loans that they can get $10 million and be able to afford to pay them back. So instead of having to save up the money for 10 years to reach the $10 million or 20 years, however long it would take. So there's Public Works Trust Fund, and then there's CDBG funding, and Ecology has some funding also that come out of this account that they apply for. So the last time the county they used CDBG funding for a water sewer project, I believe, was in the early 2000s up in Riderwood to do a sewer rehabilitation project. So that's why a lot of the cities and the counties are very upset about them taking the money out of that account, because they get the money back, basically. They loan it out to the counties and the cities and the special purpose districts. So like diking districts, drainage districts, water sewer districts can also apply for those funds. They also have emergency funds loans available. When I worked at the city of Kelso, we used that pot of money to repair a landslide. Otherwise, I don't know how we would have been able to address it with the speed that we did. So that is that pot of money. It's a different pot than the Brian Abbott.
I'll have to look at that again because they were specifically talking about the ruling that said we had to replace these culverts, and they were worried about this money going away. But if they're not using it for these type of culverts.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about a different bill also, because I know there is a bill out there to take that money and put it towards the washed out culverts that need to be replaced. So that, I heard that was the interpretation of the ruling, that they needed more money for the culverts. But I could be wrong also. They could be two different bills.
Okay. There's so many of them floating around out there.
Yes.
Susan, do you know what the longevity of a Fish Passage culvert compared to a regular culvert is? Do we get the same lifespan out of them?
We get the same lifespan out of them. So as long as the fish passage rule doesn't change about what is a passable culvert, it will last as long as a normal bridge
What is that?
culvert. Depending on the structure, it's either 50 to, generally they're ranked at 50 or 75 years. It's not uncommon to get 100 years out of them.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I will see y'all tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have HR. Okay. We just take a recess till she gets here and then just call us back? Okay. Okay, we're back. We'll head into HR. Jessica, what you got?
Good morning, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I do have one request to fill a work crew officer position. The employee put in his retirement notice effective June 1st. So they'd like to fill his position as soon as possible.
Public Works?
No, it's corrections.
Oh, it's corrections.
Yeah,
Okay.
work crew officer.
Okay. Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. I didn't know we could still do that.
They have to volunteer, I think. I don't think you can force them, right?
Good morning, Miranda Fox, Director of Corrections. Yes, we have in custody and out of custody work crews going. During COVID, we kind of dropped off to out of custody only, but we've been able to restart in custody. So part of the week in custody crews go out and part of the week out of custody crews go out. So out of custody are people that have been ordered through typically district court to either work off fines or they're doing it in lieu of jail time. So 7 days a week we're out there.
Good.
Everybody okay with that? Yeah, good, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. And then I have a request for executive session for collective bargaining.
How long do you think?
15.
Okay. Okay, we'll go executive session for collective bargaining. We're estimating about 15 minutes.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 10 minutes until 11:06 a.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 11:11 a.m.
Okay, we're back from executive session. No decisions rendered. Looks like there was nothing else, so. Anything else here? Nope.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll adjourn.